Section 22 of the Soul or Rational Psychology. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Travis Bissell. Chapter 14, Part 4 of the Soul or Rational Psychology by Emanuel Swedenborg. Translated by Frank Sewall, 1837 to 1915. And others. Section 22. Hope and Despair. 223. When we strive for and desire what we love, and yet impossibilities interfere with our attaining our end, we call this state of desire hope, and it seems to be in the will viewed as an endeavour which these obstacles are preventing from coming forth into act and motion. Thus hope is not an affection of the mind, but of its will. For the will always endeavors to act, but so long as it is resisted, does not act. Meanwhile it is affected by a certain hope, so that it remains balanced between action and inaction. Thus hope does not belong to the animus, but to the rational mind, because to its will, and so belongs to man, and not to brutes and irrational beings. Hope increases and grows just as far as the impossibilities, that is, the resistances, recede or are removed, and to remove these is the work of prudence and skill. But hope in itself is greater or less according to the degree of the love and desire of the end pursued or desired. Therefore, hope has in view desired ends, and accordingly it belongs to all the affections which are ends. For this reason, hope is the continuation of life, that is, of loves and of their ardor or ambition. But the greatest hope is that which we repose in God, to whom nothing is impossible, wherefore hope is one of the three spiritual virtues. 224. Despair exists when we cut off hope, then also when, in the end itself, love and ambition, that is, the life and ardor of the mind, collapse and are, as it were, extinguished. Then comes that dejection of the animus, the effects of which were described above. The effects in general are different species of insanity, which are diseases of the mind, different frenzies, which are diseases of the animus, and different sicknesses, which are of the body. The love of an immortality of fame after death. 225. The love of an immortality of fame, or as it is commonly called, of one's name, is natural to everyone, as appears from innumerable proofs. Who does not desire funeral pomps and obsequies, and provide for the erection of a tomb to remain for a monument after the death of the body, for the sake of his name? Who does not rejoice at the imagined talk and whispering, and is not affected by its flatteries, as yet all unknown, when it shall be said that he has gained an immortal fame, and has merited the favor of posterity? Nay, he himself would glory, and all the world applaud him, as if instinctively, if he by saying so could persuade them that he did not study to serve himself, but posterity. From thence comes the glory of a great man. From these and very many other proofs, it is plainly established that the love of our immortality or fame or name is an implanted or connate one. Hence that it is one of those truths which are within the pure intellectory. Unless the pure intellect and the soul were conscious of this, such a love could never exist in a rational mind, and because it does exist in it, it follows that it is the truth that we are to live after the death of our bodies. But our rational mind does not take this form itself, since it is ignorant of the true origin of this love, denying even its existence, and indeed those minds more ardently which regard, run after, and desire only natural ends. For something natural as well as something spiritual is within our rational minds, and the one predominating suffocates the other. Still this truth remains, as a spark under the embers when these persons come to die and desire illustrious obsequies. 226. But this love, with its peculiar ambition, is supereminent, and is either a virtue or a vice. It is a virtue when it obtains a name immortal in virtues, in honesty, in praiseworthy deeds, toward society and country, and still greater when not only toward present societies, but toward all future ones. For if there is an innate love toward societies and country, it must be that which extends to all posterity is a greater one. Such a love or virtuous ambition, when it is united to our love of self, is pure love. If one does not desire that his name may live, but rather his service, and thence his consequent public usefulness may. Such are the heroes of the world, for they spurn all glory of deeds and merits. They are even averse to these. But they rejoice from their inmost conscience that they were means of their country's felicity and safety, and that heaven above and God and the eternal essences may be conscious of their deeds, to whom in a kind of spiritual likeness they may draw near. Also such souls, the body having perished in death, are allotted a certain heaven, not alone in themselves, but also without themselves, from other souls with whom they cannot but have immediate communication of spiritual affection. Concerning these things, faith itself and reason itself refuse to doubt, but we will treat of them elsewhere. Such internal men despise, are adverse to this fame of name, such as is indicated by monuments, palaces, buildings, statues, amphitheaters, inscribed titles, and other like things. For they aspire to what is higher, and to that with which these things are not to be compared. But such a love is a vice when it is in reality extinct, and nothing remains but what is feigned, in order that one may instill into the credulous public an estimation of his deeds by a certain sincerity or truthfulness, or where self-love or spurious ambition is supereminent. In these persons the love of fame naturally rules, but the end is that of the fame of self, not of virtues, like that in him who burned the temple of Diana of the Ephesians. But without this love no one would love his offspring, for he would not see himself as immortal in it, neither would anyone fight for his country from a kind of love, nor seek death, nor love to offer himself a sacrifice. From such an incentive comes true heroic virtue, such as was exhibited in our Gustavi and Caroli. The divine providence conspires as far as possible that these may obtain their wish. Generosity, magnanimity, what the loves of the world and of the body are. 227. The Animus is called generous, and great in the degree that is elevated from what is mundane and corporeal, and so nearer to the celestial and divine. By the Animus is here understood the superior animus or mind, wherefore also this Animus is called divine. This regards the corporeal and the mundane as respectively nothing, because they are mutable, inconstant, transitory, perishable, void of life, to become as nothing, mere instruments of life, to which is assigned a reward according to service. But the celestials are regarded as the only, the sole essentials, the very things which are, the perpetual eternals, the very felicities themselves. 228. Mundane, in a strict sense, applies to the earth and the universe, with its orbs, moons, sun, stars, then especially all things which are in the earth, and its three kingdoms. Even human societies are called worlds, and every individual in the society a microcosm. So are mundane things also, those riches, possessions, and other things of the earth, which in themselves are but clods, but in society pass for the goods which are the servants of life. But corporeal things are those which allure only the body and the animus, as the sensations of touch, taste, smell, hearing, sight, or all their pleasing affections. Then also dignities and honors and other things which are taken no notice of when alone the pleasures of the body and the animus are sought after. These are called loves of the world, cupidities of the animus, and pleasures of the body, because the blood and external organs are affected by them. Our rational mind is like a balance between the corporeal and the spiritual, or between the mundane and the celestial. One arm of the beam being that of the body and animus, the other that of the pure mind and soul. If the weight of the corporeal arm prevails, then the spiritual and celestial are almost of no weight. Thus their scale is elevated. But if the other arm prevails, then the mundane and corporeal are of no weight. Thus we are balanced between heaven and earth. The weight of corporeal arm naturally prevails because we are conscious of its delights, or we are manifestly affected by a sense of them. But in the celestial arm there are no weights, but only forces, and if they prevail it will be because their delights are ineffable, infinite, eternal, and are inmostly within the aforenamed weights, thus from the idea alone of their supereminence. 229. He who is magnanimous scorns in his spirit and mind alike all mundane and corporeal things, estimating them alone from their use in promoting those things which are superior. Thus he values the taste not on account of the flavor, but because by means of the flavor he discovers the quality of nourishment and enjoys an appetite for it. He enjoys the modulations of song, musical harmonies, sweetly spoken words, and like things, not for the sake of the affections, but because they recreate the body and preserve the health of the mind. The pleasures of the fields and meadows, of colors, of the starry theater of the universe, are prized not as delights in themselves, but because they exhilarate and renew the mind, and give to it the faculty of understanding and the material for forming universal judgments out of particulars, and thus determining essential truths, and also for admiring and adoring the Maker of such a world. Riches and possessions are valued not as ends, but as means to higher things. So also dignities and honors. He who regards all these things as mere servants and instrumental causes in themselves dead, and who only venerates the higher things abstracted from them, is magnanimous. And because he proves this by his acts, he is generous. For universal nature is so created that as an instrument it may serve life and the spiritual essences to whose rule it is wholly subject. 230. This love and this ambition show who is magnanimous and generous by nature. Also, the magnanimity and generosity themselves indicate the quality of this love and ambition. There are in general two loves, the love of the body and the world, and the love of heaven and deity. Love of self and spurious ambition reveal the love of the body and the world, while contempt of self, or love of serving the public, and genuine ambition reveal the love of heaven and of deity, even to the smallest thing which lies in the way thither. From these loves it may be known who is really magnanimous and generous, but there is a magnanimity and generosity feigned for the sake of being made the means of corporeal and worldly possessions. 231. Thus magnanimity is not any affection, but rather a quality of the animus and mind. From these things it may be judged what the animus is and to what loves it inclines. Pusillanimity and folly. 232. Pusillanimity is opposed to magnanimity and is so called from this opposition, but as opposed to generosity, it is called folly. Pusillanimity has no right of its own, nor sufficient intellect to enable it to assert its mind, but is inconsistently borne to this side or that, wherever its lust, its presumption, or the persuasion of others may draw it. Even if it should remain a moment in higher things, it would fall back at once into the lower and be plunged into its mere bodily living. Folly, however, spurns entirely the higher things, and embraces the lower with all its animus and heart, and considers these as the only and the all, and indeed as the very entities of reason. Thus it is characteristic of a purely animal and brutish man. Still other things may be deduced on this subject from the above description of magnanimity and generosity. Avarice. 233. Avarice is the love of riches and earthly possessions, but its quality may be recognized from its end. It is natural to love wealth, as it is to love those ends to which wealth is the means. Wherefore it is natural to brutes, even to insects, to collect and put away the necessaries of life for a coming winter. And because money is the universal medium for promoting and acquiring intermediate ends, it is called the nerve of business. This is not avarice, but prudence for providing means, or a human providence granted by God, especially if the love of means does not exceed the love of the end. Often, however, it goes beyond. For worldly and corporeal loves never halt in their march, but in all directions they seize upon new growths, as the love of dignities, of honors, of ruling, the love of vanity, display, haughtiness, the love of pleasures, the love of looking out for one's own, not only during one's own life and that of his children, but even to that of grandchildren, since the storge inspires a kind of perpetual life which increases toward the remoter generations. In a similar degree increases the love of riches, that is, of means to the perpetual end. There are also superior loves which wealth serves as a means, such as the love of agriculture, of defending one's country, of preserving society. Wherefore the greatest care of a ruler is that his kingdom may abound in money. Wealth may also serve as means to certain spiritual ends, as in performing works of charity, in lending aid to the needy, in promoting and propagating divine worship, in building temples, and in many other things. Now, because money is the universal medium of so many and almost of all ends, and as each person has his own loves, desires, and ends, it follows that the love or estimation of money rules throughout the world. 234. But, indeed, if wealth is sought not for the sake of ends, but for its possession merely, that is, not as means, but as the end itself, then this love is that avarice which is called sordid, and is folly itself, the trait of a base mind. It is against nature itself, and against the principles of all reason, that wealth should be regarded as pure end, for that which in itself is means cannot be the end, and this is the reason why money is regarded as the very possibility of all ends, consequently as being all loves in potency. For the mind is more delighted in the contemplation of its loves than the body is in their execution or in its pleasures themselves, since the view is more lasting and constant, while the pleasure itself is inconstant and ends with the act, as in venereal love. Wherefore pleasures are ascribed to the imagination, for the life itself of the mind flourishes from similar loves. Besides, in avaricious minds all these loves remain, because of the possibility of all things which wealth promises, and by these loves there is aroused a universal idea which is more pleasing in that it is the more universal, and this appears to be the cause of avarice. This is confirmed by the location itself of this affection, being in the rational mind only, since it is not an affection of the superior mind, as it is never natural, but one that is acquired in the course of time, and that increases in old age just in the degree that the corporeal loves recede. It is not an affection of the lower mind, Animus, because it is not of the body, the cupidities of the Animus and the pleasures of the body being inseparable. 235. But to what an extent avarice may become a mental disease, insanity, irrationality, and niggardliness, is fully evident from its effect, in that the more completely it is enrooted, the more are other loves blunted and extirpated. For the mind occupied by this perpetual idea is as it were suffocated, is merged not in the body but in the earth, so that it cannot be elevated toward the higher things, nor can the spiritual inflow into what is grossly natural. Thus the God whom the avaricious man worships is like Pluto himself, for the worshipper adores that he himself may be blessed, that is, that additional riches may be given him. But in mind he worships his treasures as a god. In these he recognizes all possibility, providence, power, and glory, and so he in secret wholly denies the divine. From the mind of a miser all love of society is wholly rejected, likewise friendship, and even the love of one's own, which is nevertheless an extremely natural love. Even the love of the body hardly remains, because this is the love of the earth, and all cupidities are spurned because they are pleasures that cost. Also honors and repute of name are of no account to the miser, since he persuades himself that he possesses potentially all the honors of the universe. Thus the love of self is supreme, for he regards himself as the whole universe and not a part of it. Thus he places among the virtues nothing but vices, such as injuries done to his neighbor, plots for reducing whole homes to extremities, and innumerable similar things. 236. These passages are to be amended, as the subjects here treated of have not been deduced from their origins. End of section 22.